Yeah.
So there's an element of mystery all over your presentation. Then, yeah, but maybe it is difficult to talk about it. Yeah, then the first poem, can you show that slide, Ameya? That first, the poem,
Yeah, yeah.
first poetry. Yeah.
Just a minute. You can see this?
Not clear.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, now it is clear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because poetic writing, uh, it takes time to understand. So I would like to read it again. So that is why I asked.
Okay. Okay.
You are written walk alone in the crowd and noise
Yeah.
until there is
None.
none. Until there is, you mean to say, until there is no noise or there
Crowd.
is silence?
Yeah. There is until there is no noise and there is no crowd.
But you want to walk alone in the crowd also.
Yeah. Because even when I'm walking alone in the crowd, there is actually still the crowd is still there,
Yeah.
even though I'm alone. But when even after that crowd is gone, there is a much more different impact it makes in me, I think, or I feel so.
Yeah, I got the feeling that even though you are in a crowd and the noisy environment, you are with yourself at heart. That is what I felt on reading that.
Oh,
You were
okay.
reflecting on something and walking. That is what I felt. Am I right?
Uh, I don't,
I don't know.
I don't know, because when I wrote it, I was reflecting upon it in that moment, at that moment, and then I had an idea, and now what I presented is actually somewhat close to that idea, or it is a different understanding of the same idea. So, but
Because
reading that line, yeah,
that always happens somewhere. You know, I also wrote a poem long time back, and I started reading. I read that again. I could not understand why I wrote that. That happens.
okay. But I think it actually is beautiful because when you think back or when you read it after a long time and you there's a moment of thought you give again, or there's a moment of thought that is put into it again to understand what it is. So there's an it's some it creates a mystery and there's a strain. I think there's a wonder in it when you read it again. So it is as if you're reading your same idea you wrote years back for the first time again.
No, you have to go beyond the ideas,
Okay.
and here, at this point, you have to consider the possible nature of the referent. Keep the slide back. This is precisely in the two lines.
Yeah.
Precisely, there is the strategy to get out of the second mental trap, centricity and conformity. Every child is trained, insisted, educated, maybe even compelled and punished to follow, to walk along with the crowd, along with the society, along with the norms and conditions and regulations and whatever belief systems or traditions of the society. And great majority of people, uh, by that early conditioning, tend to follow that. But the one who continues to do that walking by various coincidences or by inherent nature of inspiration, if such a person continues to walk, then it is possible that walking can take him or her beyond the uh, crowd and reach the front position and then walk alone. That's what every creative person, every so-called genius in the history thus far has done. Inevitably, because walking along the crowd, being a part of the um, collective unconscious of the crowd, one is a part of the crowd. Okay, we don't say that it is wrong. But here our concern is to develop that geniusness, to be in tune with the attendant spirit where you are alone. You are the only one. Because that attendant spirit is your own. That attendant spirit is concerned about you. You have that engine. To what extent that engine can take you. So if you depend on that engine, if you are inspired about that engine, unlike other people, you will definitely cut across the boundaries of the crowd and you will end up walking alone. Unless you walk alone, you will not see the new things which the others are not able to see. Unless you see what other people are not able to see, you are a part of the others. Okay, the others might have crossed the great boundaries as of now, the great boundaries of philosophies and humanities and sciences and technologies. Okay, it is very advanced society now. But if you continue to walk, there will be yet new more perceptions possible for you. So the walking alone is inevitable for a genius himself, which I have mentioned some time back, that there is even a point of definition about a creative original individual, that the one who walks alone in the midnight. Okay, so every one of you must sort of inevitably walking alone. Already, right now, what is going on? Right now is an evidence of your ability to walk alone. And millions of people are sitting and probably watching television programs or listening to music or watching what you call mobile phones, WhatsApp, and other things. You 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people are focusing on this kind of concerns. What more evidence is required? There should not be any logic to evaluate what kind of path you are traveling alone. Whichever path you are traveling alone, that defines your identity. That creates the unique path of your existence, which will inevitably lead to that unique purpose of life, unique goal. So it is very clear. All right? Yeah.
Yeah.
There are millions of people, crowd, legions of people walking together. Legions. Nothing wrong about walking along with them, but maybe fortunately or maybe a little bit unfortunately, somehow or the other, by various coincidences or by various destiny factors, you happen to walk alone. You cross the boundaries of this crowd. That's all.
Okay. Thank
All
you so
right.
much.
All right.
From the title to the end,
Yeah.
the flow was really great. It was just flowing from one to another, and it didn't seem that you were looking at the slides at all, because you were reflecting on your experiences of meditating on these parables and other learnings that you had. So more than talking about the parables or talking about um, the subject matter, you are talking about how you experienced those parables. And it, to me, it felt like when you are presenting it, you were doing that journey totally alone. Like even though the audience was there, you were in that forest. I mean, even the slides, the pictures, it was all very correlated. And I don't know, I can even hear a water falling sound. Is it somebody's is the water feature, or is it in your slide?
No, it was not in my slide. No, no,
Okay. So for a moment I was thinking probably you put even the sound effect to
no, no.
relate to that forest, and um, you know, to
No,
give that experience. that completeness.
Thank you so much, Nityaji. But when you said when I was presenting, I was traveling alone. Like it was like I was traveling alone. Yes, I was because I think this is the first time I'm presenting without an trap, or I don't know. I'm not a. There's not that awareness that I'm telling people or I'm talking in front of people. There is a trap that forms when I have an awareness.
Mm.
Yes, I'm telling someone or I'm presenting in front
Mm.
of someone. That wasn't there this time. I felt a
Yeah,
little bit more free to express what I'm
you
feeling.
are almost reminiscing your own journey inside that forest, or even the master cook, the master thief slide. You had the beautiful moonlit night with the mountains, and I could actually relate to that journey of the master thief and his son. A better visualization from through your slides. So
Oh,
that was really great, yeah. And I must say the your poetic presentation, each of them were like the quotes that people will normally um, print and put on their walls. Um,
oh,
yeah, it's
yeah.
not just the normal quotes because, for instance, um, look at the mirror of look at you in the mirror of the self until there is none. So those kind of captions make you think, and because people can't express themselves though in precisely in those words, sometimes people will put those quotes on their walls. So your poetry was almost like, all of them were um, reminding me of the quotes I've seen Sir has put in SEP and other places. So
Oh,
it was really wonderful.
thank you so much.
Um, and as Veeraji said, like, it had a very mystic quality. Your quality of presentation and precision of your statements, it was really amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And you really nailed the empty mind to look at things as they are, which is a big takeaway for. I mean, it is not that easy to reach that state, but reminding us again about that emptiness. Um,
Yeah,
and through your presentation, you completely have done something like that because your presentation itself was the example of how you can do empty your mind and just there was only tea. There was no opponent, there was no audience or anything else. Uh, yeah, really,
yes.
really wonderful to see it. And and this caption also I have noted: body is free, but mind is trapped. So true, so true. The body is always free, and
Yeah,
it is. I mean, we say that you can escape the everyday any day, but it doesn't happen. Why doesn't happen? It's not because somebody has chained you, but you don't see those chains that in the mind that is trapping you. So wonderful reminder and great. Um, Thank you for taking us through your journey and the small steps you have taken. And it's actually a big step. I don't think I have seen many of your presentations, but this was one of the best um, I've seen in this session from you. So good on you. Thanks.
Ameya, can I ask something?
His point that the body is a victim of the mind is really surprisingly correct, and I think it has been his discovery. A great lot of illnesses are actually caused by the mind. Uh, as I mentioned before, all the four creators of Ayurveda, Dhanvantari, Susruta, Charaka, and Sarngadhara. These are the four pillars of Ayurveda. All of them equally declare Ragadi Roga. I mean, in case of illness, Ragadi meaning emotional conflicts and other emotional turbulences leading to Roga. So that's a higher order example, that would definitely imply that at other times the body is totally under the control of the mind. So, uh, because the body is the mind too. Mind is just the sound of the body. When the body works, there is the mind. But that mind in a boomerang effect, in a retrospective loop, comes back and somehow restricts the body. But if you look at the little babies, little children, up to the age of 3, their bodies are just operating. Their minds are only forming. The body only operates in the very beginning in all its random variations. But what happens is in that seemingly interminable randomness of variations of the body of the little baby, by which a little bit of annoyance or disturbance or unsettlement happens in the environment, then the parents interfere and give some commands and comments and expressions and responses by which the mind is developed, as well as the mind learns to uh, have some kind of a restriction upon the movement of the body. So that is that first induction program where the mind achieves precedence, control over the body. And unfortunately, most of the initial learnings required for a child to survive in the adult environment, body control is required. And most of those things which the adult environment uses are practiced, which are all established and practiced by the adults. So the adults are more or less victims of speed trap or lack of understanding, or maybe various reasons. Constantly try to make the child do all those doings with the body. So in that process, inevitably, the mind also becomes more focused, because the mind or the developing sensitivity system only listens to the instructions and commands and expressions and response and behaviors of the adults. So naturally, the mind has to take uh, interpretation of the adult environment and has to translate that action. How to take the spoon, how to hold the pencil, how to hold the book, how to hold even a toy. So in that process, inevitably, the mind takes precedence over the body. That's a very wonderful reality which Ameya has discovered for himself, though it has been known in the so-called field of depth psychology. But nevertheless, it is Ameya's originality that he identified it. He doesn't know anything about psychology. That is his originality. Anyway, coming back to the point, I have told you, because I have not been trained much, or I have been kind of an eccentric from childhood. For example, I was able to perform on at least 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 musical instruments without any training. I would just look at somebody playing tabla, and within 1 day or 2 days, I would also start playing tabla. And mouth organ. Mouth organ is a very unique instrument. You cannot see how the other is performing. So I heard and I realized I got some 1 or 2, 3 instructions, and I started playing mouth organ. So I clearly realized that how the mind, if it is free and uninterrupting, if it is not interfering, the body would naturally, as Ameya also said, will approach a thing with all its original freedom. This every new parent must understand this, what to do. Anyway, there's a lot of time when an individual can master his art and try to surpass the mental traps at a deeper level. These are the real mental traps, but it cannot be easily identified, and people do not need that level of body control also, unless one is learning piano or painting or drawing or ultimate craft works, or someone is trained in car race or doing military operations like fighter jet, operating fighter jet and all that. Then only that level of body performance is required. In normal day-to-day life for the great majority, that level of body control is not at all significant. They just sit down, walk clumsily, sit clumsily, eat clumsily, talk clumsily, and do clumsily. So that's okay. But in your case, uh, I mean, most of you are learning something. Now, Sudhi is learning piano and many other things. Anuradha also is learning. So, for example, Meenakshi, in her driving, I did not teach her any driving. What I told were certain dialogues, including the dialogue that research findings show that people above the age of 40, 45 cannot learn a skill, especially like driving on the road. Telling that I could make her see through the way the mind can restrict the performance and perception of the body. All right.
Sir, Ameya has given the example that he is not able to wake up unless you call him 2 or 3 times. So this is associated with the mind traps. The body is a mental traps. The body is not able to listen because of the mind traps. Is it because the body is weak, or even I am also not able to get up? I also want to get up like Ramesh and Nitya and mastery of a few hours of sleep. I am not able to do it. So I thought I will ask you.
There could be occasions where the body is actually weak. Actually weak meaning long day of working or travel or some walking around and all that. The body naturally, because it's an organism, it would get tired. Even animals get tired. Even then, the mind can insist. That part of the mind we call the will. Will is part of the engines of intelligence. Then the will can operate if it is required. And normally it is not required. So in Ameya's case, I think it is a matter of the will. So which he could apply and he got up. There could be an element of little body weakness also, but none of this is uh, a sustainable state when the will is powerful. Like Edmund Hillary said, at 3,000 feet height, my heart was trembling with fear, which is a fact, which must be a truth. But I just took the next step. So that is the mind setting or the will of Edmund Hillary. Like that little girl, 14-year-old girl, who is that? A French girl? That French girl who led the army to led France to freedom. Joan of Arc. Yeah,
Joan of Arc. Yeah.
yeah. She was a little girl, 14 years, and somehow she perceived that the church bell, the sounds of the church bell, were talking to her. Come on, you are the person. You have to lead the French army. How can that's a will plus body plus spirit plus intellect plus intelligence plus self, all this acting together. Forget about body. We are talking about the body, which is something very simple. That to say so. If there is a will, you will get up and go. So if we have to go somewhere at 3:30 in the morning, Amaya would be the first one to be ready. It has happened so many times. But here he thinks, okay, it's all right. So what about a real historical case of Joan of Arc, a village girl? It is no, it is the will controlling. Forget about the body. Much more serious aspects like the mind and the self to decide that she would be the one who would be leading the French army towards its liberation. Look at okay, maybe a senior person, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. You know, he was not a healthy person or so. He was just a sort of an ordinary barrister. He must have been an ordinary barrister. That's why he had to go to South Africa. If he was definitely good or he belonged to, of course, he belongs to some particular, whatever it is. I think he left to Africa because he had no opportunity in India. Uh, uh, what led him, you see, to do all those things without any background, without any without any known examples in history? He decided to wash the toilets of the workers. It was never done before. There was no story like that. It was his choice. Then he courageously led his movement in a place where the Britishers were in much more control. And he was burning of the passports and Dandi March. So you look for those kind of examples. We have to look at those examples. They are the models for us. Like the Buddha, his will. So as soon as he had the realization that life is after all a meaningless drama, people are all, there is some kind of a suffering for everybody, and that suffering has to be managed. The moment, the instance he had that understanding, he just decided to quit his valid kingdom and abandon his little baby and wife. So that will. So it was a moment of will. Let us say we are now taking so-called larger examples. And for example, in this last 7, 8, 9 months, the will of Nitya to shave her hair. The design of her hair was actually very appealing, very good. Yeah, there is an elephant in our surroundings. So
Oh, very good, sir.
people are running around. The
Oh,
entire village is
Uh-huh.
into action. Actually, it is 9:15. The entire village goes to sleep by definitely by 8 o'clock. And
Okay.
because of the presence of the elephant, their will
Mm-hmm.
to survive, their will to
Mm-hmm.
protect the crops, take them into action.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
ladies, I mean females, even little children and others, they
Mm.
all of them have got up and they're all running into the field to chase away the elephant. So now there is a reason
Oh.
for that will.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps a great lot of people do not have that reason. So Nitya has changed her name, which I have been telling her for some 10 years. Ever since I met her, I used to tell her that. But only after this program she changed it. Then Priya, she is actually faculty in a so-called top institute in the country, and it requires a great lot of will to declare that I have changed my name into Meenakshi. It is. I don't think it has ever happened in a situation like that. So these are examples of will. So it is the will of you which I have mentioned, like making Nitya, for example, sitting there. And it is not only sitting there at this point of time. Actually, she is managing a great lot of opposition and her base also. I don't want to talk about that. Anyway, mm, that's all. I appreciate that. I appreciate the troubles undergone by Nitya or even Meena. She also has undergone a great lot of opposition in participating in this program. Uh, and maybe even Vinay must be facing a little bit of critical perceptions or comments from other people. Um, so these are all nice. This is the essence of the famous declaration. Every test in life, in existence, is a test of the will, including the classroom test in a primary school. Those who had the will to sit down and read and reread, they got the A plus. It is not because they are more intelligent or anything like that. In general, most of them are comparable so-called intelligence level. For example, most of you sitting here, for example, Anuradha, a rank holder in her maybe plus two or degree postgraduate level, then Meenakshi, throughout rank holder in her plus two, plus degree, plus postgraduation, and then Ashadi doing her engineering in one of the top institutions in Kerala State, Ramesh, uh, Nitya also, I think she was again a top performer. So it happened actually because of the will only. You know, in fact, in even meditation, So-called meditations in the ancient caves or in the Himalayas or in other places, that was partly a test of the will also. Not partly, because development of will was necessary there. Even so-called brahmacharya is to test the will only. Upavasa is to test also the will. Unless the will becomes really strong and becomes the central manager or the leader of the organization, that is you, uh, in general, which I repeat, the self may not be able to manage the consequences of what happens when the Satori comes across. It is the opening up of the most powerful creature in the world. It is leaving the entire surroundings inside the mind and going to the unknown. So unless the will is there, individual may go haywire. Like why the great majority is within the boundaries of the majority. Like Ameya Rajarishi was telling, the one who walks alone beyond the boundary. Why everybody cannot? Because they feel uncomfortable. They do not have the confidence. Even when they have the confidence and the courage and the feeling that they want to be unique, but the will is not allowing. So that will required to manage the consequence of your transition from the known to the unknown. That is what is trained in so-called meditation and brahmacharya and upavasa and all that. Or by the means of jnana, wisdom, knowledge, the jnana yoga, which you are all already comfortable with or which you are all undergoing. What jnana you undergo is a little bit relevant, but that new neuronal networks that form in you by dealing with different and remote and unique um, perceptions and reflections and conceptualizations and imaginations, that makes your central nervous system achieving a critical turning point where you will be able to manage any turbulences of living, moving alone, traveling alone in your own ship. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, Maya. Uh,
Yes,
you
Raji.
said you had some other understandings from the parable that from the master thief. You mentioned that you could not strike you before. Now you have some more understandings.
Yeah.
You did not say what it is.
In Master Thief,
Yeah.
I think I tried to say that I had different understandings before, but this time when I started reflecting upon the parable for the past 3 days, I had new understandings, and that new understandings is are presented here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. But
that is because
this presentation itself is a master thief project only. Like sir put you in this forest of this,
yeah,
the
yeah.
palace of this Google Meet.
Yes, when
And
you say that, yeah,
and he had an exceptional point there. That is the moment of discovery happened to the boy when the father left him.
Yeah.
And that was very unique. Of course, uh, you may discover
Exactly.
many, many things in your life, but when you finally cut the Gordian knot, or when you finally realize that you're ultimately alone, that moment there will be a mysterious, altogether new learning emerging inside you. And at a larger level, such an inevitable moment of learning will happen at just before, some very time before the moment of so-called death, when all the contents of the consciousness become irrelevant and vanishing. and a mild stream of alertness remain, then there will be a great discovery for everyone about the truth of all this going on. So at that moment, there was a, let us say, a metaphorical death of the child. Because he never expected that the most powerful companion who has been with him till that point would escape, leaving him alone in the darkness of the palace. Absolutely strange situation of the palace and the setting of the palace, and the clear evidence that there are daimyos or powerful samurais are guarding the palace. Look at that moment. At that moment, he had the will again, Veena. Instead of being collapsed,
Yes.
he had the will. His will was so unperturbed, unaffected, and it was clearly available. At that moment, that will inevitably give him a way to escape. No doubt. That was the will partly operated or demonstrated in the film Titanic also. You have to save the man, and you have to cut the chain. That's all. And you do it, and the chain will be cut. And and every way, when you become trainers of this level, or trainers or guides or mentors, when you do not depend upon available textbooks and learned memories, every one of you is kind of little boys and girls being left alone in a strange palace. Because, for example, Veena, I would say every time she comes across a new patient, she's a kind of a girl left alone in a palace to escape somehow.
Yes,
So
sir.
her
Yes.
will, her unperturbed will only give her the clues on how to manage. And it will happen. That is the trust you have to have even when you do not have sufficient experience. For example, Veena has sufficient number of experience of managing people, managing patients. Every patient is a new patient. So even when you say you have experience, actually it may not really give you any extra confidence. But maybe after 2, 3, 4, 5 years you may get a confidence. But still, every situation is a new situation. Every unknown situation is a new palace where you are left alone. So that is the moment of discovery. That's a wonderful point Ameya Rajarishi has brought out, which in fact even I have never thought about it.
Absolutely.
Uh, may I make a few points?
Yeah, yes, Rameshji.
Okay, so Ameya, so today's presentation. So normally, I during presentations I listen, I take some notes and so on. So today I was trying to listen, but then trying to read your wordings. Then I was trying to see the visuals. But all of these I was not in my normal state, so I was not able to take notes. I was not able to. So the presentation was on a different level where it was more of a feel factor. So again, beautifully, Veena and Nityaji have summarized that one. So there was continuously that samasya, that continuously that mystery factor was continuously there. So so any pointers which I was trying to note down, there was one more thing that mystery was something coming across. So continuously that mystery was continuously going on, where it was more of a feel factor. So that it was very original. Again, That is one other point which was noting down. Very original, very true, and yeah. So then each of that wordings so poetic, and each of that is a quote in itself, which again Nitya ji and Veena both of them covered the same pointers. So so powerful, and so I feel effortless of the effort I put in. So a beautiful thing in terms of um, I'm the same state as what you are. I'm not having words, but I could actually feel what you have felt. So thank you, Ameya, for making us all feel. So we don't have words to really explain, but we are actually feeling. So you have made us feel. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, there's
Actually,
one more thing, Amaya. Like
Yeah,
you have written in the last but one slide, I think, creating known from the unknown. Can you put on that slide?
yeah. On my,
There's some doubt.
yeah,
Yeah, creating, yeah, the one before.
yeah. Creating known out of
Known
unknown.
out of unknown. That is very mysterious because from the known only you go to the unknown, but you have put it in.
It don't cancel it.
That's okay.
What Veena made is a theoretical point.
Yeah,
Unknown is 100% unknown. If there is a part of the unknown known, you can proceed from that. But all creations happen by beginning with an element of the known or a part of the unknown. That's the preliminary stage of creation which Veena pointed out. But
yeah,
Ameya has written the next stage. It is a poetic construction. Therefore, that statement is valid. But this happened. Veena is asking about the process of arriving at this.
yeah.
But that
Pros.
the process involved is beginning with the known, the falling stone. That much is visible. From that only the search into the unknown behind the falling happens. If there was no things falling like that, perhaps the discovery of gravitational principles would not have happened. So that element is there. From that element, only creation happens. So Venus is referring to the just the previous phase of what Ameya Rajarishi has written there. So, as an observation, this poetic concept is quite okay. Known is created out of unknown, and most of the research literature on creativity or most of the writings about creativity also say more or less the same thing. But I mentioned the process of creation, which involves beginning with the available. And to my opinion, I am the only one who mentioned that aspect of creation or origination. It can happen only by the trigger of the available. Like a girl is standing alone. So that visual was the trigger, was the falling apple for William Wordsworth to create the principles of gravitational force or that poetry, the solitary reaper. But everybody normally talks what Ameya says. From the known, from the unknown, if the known is created. But there is an ultimate value in what Ameya said. That is his poetic originality. Poets often come across original perceptions about which they themselves may not be that aware of. That is called originality. It originates from nowhere. In fact, in the case of Satori, in the case of enlightenment, it is from the unknown. The known is happening. Rather, the known, I mean, that awareness of enlightenment happen as absolutely from the unknown. Absolutely, 100%. If any element of the unknownness or the mystery of enlightenment was known to people, a great lot of people would have got enlightened. Most of the literature is on enlightenment. Most of the guidelines on satori or meditation or incubation, etc., they're all an attempt to give a clue about the nature of the
21 clues.
unknown or the state of enlightenment. But proceeding through that known clues, almost nobody can reach enlightenment because there is a 100% jump from the known there. So satori happens out of absolute unknown, and that nevertheless requires creative effort on the part of the doer also.
Because most of Ameya's writings are at this level only.
Yeah, which I have told him is of poetic advantage, but maybe a little bit disadvantages for practical approach to life, work, relationships, and even language. But his poetic perception is something unusual, so that cannot be accessed by normal training or normal education. So let it be there.
Sir, can we say what Veenaji was talking about is more of explorative thinking, and what Ameya is talking about from creating known out of unknown is where we are converging the thought process? Can we also look at it from that direction?
That is when you say that converging of thought process, you mean 2 points converging, right?
Hmm.
So that second point is not available at the time.
Hmm.
So there is only one. So we cannot say converging. But proceeding through that one, you may come across the other. Then, of course, there is a little bit of hard work to make it converging. Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. In the final work, in your final presentation or in your final thesis or in your final discovery or in your final design, of course, there is the convergence. But at the beginning, convergence is not possible because there is only one.
Hmm. Hmm.
The approach road, the receiving end is not available. Once the tip of the receiving end is available, then you can proceed by the act of converging with the tips and the elements and the components of the new. Yes.
Got it, sir. Yeah.
All right.
Hello, Ameya.
Hello.
Yeah, hello,
Can I make a point?
Anuj. Yeah,
Can you
yes,
hear me?
Anuj. Yeah, I can hear you.
Uh, especially the visuals and the poetry that you put in. I felt, if hearing your presentation, I felt I was like the the prince who was sent to the forest to hear the sounds of the forest. So I've I've heard a few sounds, but I don't know if heard it correctly. So you are the master here, so you have to say if I've heard the sounds correctly or not. Uh, first, I felt.
That's a very good metaphoric discussion. Always try this. Always just try this. Even when you're reviewing it, try to be as much creative as possible. Now, this is an opportunity where you can experiment with. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Good. Good, Anuradha. Very good.
Uh, One thing is, I felt you were trying to etch out a path for yourself in solitude. All your visuals were about people or monks walking alone, and you're trying to go away from the crowd. But at the same time, I felt there was other than outside. to be more singer, I felt there was more noise within yourself than outside you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't think you are very much affected by the noise outside, but there are a lot of noise within you, which is, I won't say affecting you, but that is channeling your thoughts and ideas.
Yes. 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 Yeah. That is actually what I meant when or implied when I wrote the first two, 3 lines. I mean, that 2 lines.
Okay. Okay. Right. So,
That's a good observation. Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
Yeah. In a way, at a creative level, we are always fighting with the noise inside.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of things coming up, a lot of thoughts coming in, and yeah, I felt Ameya was becoming more and more sharp to the noises within. Maybe uh, yes, there are a lot of sounds, but he's in the process of maybe he has not yet realized that it's the sound of the flower opening. There are a lot of sounds coming in, but maybe his attention has grown sharper and he's able to hear a lot of things. But uh, the stage at which he is in, maybe he's not realized what the sound is all about.
Yeah. Actually, that's the only thing what I thought about when I wrote those 2 lines. That walking in the crowd and the noises. All of them are the noises and crowd within me. It was not outside. But then when I explained, I also explained about that and other few interpretations I felt right now. But that is the main important point on which I wrote those 2 lines. Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
Anuj.
Okay. Right. So I wish you all the best in your journey. I feel the horse might pass any moment from the way you are the sounds and the what do you call the feelings that you're getting and the awareness that you're getting maybe increasing and it's on a and you might see the horse any moment. That's what I feel.
Thank you, Anuj. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I also had one question. This is regarding the presentation, the slide that you had on the master cook.
Yeah.
When you take metaphors and symbolic representations,
Mm.
it should be correlated to the concept or the situation or the context.
Okay.
So, because ocean, as you yourself said, almost 3/4 of the planet Earth, it's a mighty force. So, that cannot be the metaphor for what you talked about the cook.
Okay.
So even when you select a symbolic representation
Mm.
or a metaphoric representation, it's not override the point which you're talking about. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
That's why Anuradha made that point. So this
Okay.
metaphor is not actually very fitting to the concept of the vastness of the mind of the cook. All
Okay.
right, yeah.
Okay.
Hello, Ameya. Hello.
Yes. Hello,
Yeah. Thanks.
Namanji.
Many thanks for making such a thought-provoking presentation. Although I missed some of the initial parts of your presentation as I was on way to home, but you have presented your learnings through many newer concepts and ideas. For example, mystery and wonders, creativity of unknown, thoughts creates reality of the world, etc. And certainly these are your experiences and learnings. But as you have presented in a newer way, it is required some more words to get it clarified to all to the core. and certainly that way it has got very mysterious. And but I thank you for making all your presentation in a completely making all your learnings and experiences in a very newer concepts and newer ways with newer words. That is very brilliant, and certainly it will need more words, as you also have told, as you have find lacking. It will require some more clarifications to get to the core of it. Anyway, thank you. Good,
Thank you.
very brilliant.
Thank you, Navinji.
That's a very critical comment, a very significant comment, especially because you have that poetic conceptualization. Poetry is all about a very unique conceptual linkaging, like the lotus garden to the cheek of the beautiful female. So the poet suddenly feels a correlation and just like that talk about that. And how will you convey, for example, the correlation between the lotus garden and the female's cheek to a second standard student? See? So that would require enormous explanation, like Naveen pointed out. At the time of your presentation, you explained most of the concepts more or less clearly and confidently and let's say very beautifully. But when you are asked questions about your own ideas, your flow was not available. You are not able to respond to that properly. Like the questions of Veena or the point mentioned by Anu also. That's because of your originality. Some moment of your originality just provided you that concepts.
Right, sir, right.
So that is okay. But that's so-called poetically justifiable. But in the context of these sessions, where the purpose is also to develop your conceptualizing ability, your interpretative ability, like you have done for the samasya or for the parables and all that. That is a very critical element in our sessions. Like if you had seen those lines of somebody else's presentation, again, you may have to interpret it and explain it. That's the competency which I want every one of you to develop it. Okay. If those concepts in the slides are given to any one of you, without your explanation, every one of the remaining candidates must explain it in their own ways, of course. That interpretative ability, interpretation is very critical. So when Veena asked a question or Anu asked a question, you could have applied that interpretative ability.
Yeah.
So from from the unknown, you could have explained it. If you come across that lines in some other book, how will you do? You will just read as an English language and just go to the next sentence. So the higher orbits of philosophical perspectives often contain 30% of those levels of statements, like Tao or even Tao of physics or any of the books on Zen or the so-called Socratic thinking and Socratic conceptualization is possible only if you are capable of making at least your own interpretations to concepts like that. And here it was your own concepts. Okay, so what Naveen pointed out is the clear fact about it. You have to explain your own points.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Your presentation felt very wise actually. It's like a very wise and mysterious person is presenting it. So it was very abstract and based entirely on things that we cannot see, but we can experience with you probably, and you were trying to take us along in your inner journey. So it was a very reflective presentation, and so that way it was very different from all the presentations that we had earlier. So this was entirely about rediscovering what you have learned, and even the point about walking alone in the crowd and noise until there is none. I found that very profound actually, because even in a crowd, I felt you're very right in saying that, because your journey is your journey, and your realities will be very different even for two people walking on the same path. So I I felt that was very deep. Uh, One question I had is, you were saying it is difficult to make big changes in the presence of Sir when you were talking about sword-like attention.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand that.
Oh, that big changes when I'm with. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that is. I was saying that big changes. Yeah, even if I make a small change, I don't feel as if it is something, because when I look back to the change what I did, then still Swami has much more to say about it, or to make. He wants me to change more in the aspect I already changed. So it is harder for me to change when I'm with him. That is what I try to say. So I think half of what I try to say wasn't conveyed because of the internet connection. So I think so.
No, it was okay actually.
Oh.
Yeah, but I was thinking maybe it's because you are already transforming rapidly. That's why you're not able to see it. Because
Yeah.
you're constantly changing. I mean, for a person outside, for a person who's not changing, a small change will seem big, but because you are already in that state of change, I thought maybe you are not able to identify that.
Yes, might be because actually I was not able to interpret what I was feeling in good, correct words. But when you interpret it like that, I feel that is true, because that fits in much more closer to that feeling than what I try to uh, interpret. So yes, yeah, I think so. It's like when you said that, I feel that is much more the correct way to talk about it, because after the session, yes, I have realized I am changing. I have the realization that I'm changing. Before I did not have that. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, thank you for that, Satish.
Thank you for the great presentation. Yeah, it was nice.
Thank you, Satish.
Good evening, Ameya.
Yeah, good evening, Meenakshi.
I joined in today only to hear your poetry.
Oh, okay.
I have a presentation tomorrow where I'm going to be presenting the first draft of the report that I have made. And today is going to be a long night.
Oh.
But I decided I would come because I find your poetry unique.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi.
in 2 or 3 words, you're able to hold a depth of meaning which people will take sentences to convey. And I saw the same thing today in your slides. Concise sentences which meant so much.
Thank you so much.
And I'm happy that I came.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi.
And as I watched you present,
Yeah.
there was one feeling that came to my mind, that I was seeing a different person. A person who was comfortable with himself and what he had to say, which could only come when you say what you have found.
Yeah.
And I hope you build on that and
Yes,
find
I'll try
yourself
to.
in your words. Yes. That was hugely different from how I've seen you in the past.
Oh,
I could not pay full attention to the early part of your presentation because I joined in, I think, somewhere in the middle. But there's one takeaway I will think about, which I think is very useful for me, very, very profound. And that was that one sentence that you wrote, that question your answers.
Hmm.
And that's so beautifully put. And I think that's something that I need to do. I need to question my answers and find newer and newer ones. Thank you so much for that.
thank you so much, Meenakshi.